Hi Year 11, it's Mrs Cartwright and Miss Hussein here. We're going to talk to you today about planning. So far in the lesson today you've looked at sentence structures and how they can have an effect, and you also looked at how to structure your writing on a piece of paper. What we want to look at is how you structure out your planning. Your teachers will have taught you a lot about planning in class, and you've spent a few lessons looking at planning at home. A couple of lessons ago you would have looked at the box method, which is what Miss Hussein is going to show you, and then I'm going to look at the Freytag pyramid method, which we looked at before you broke up for Christmas. So Miss Hussein is going to go first, looking at the box method. We're going to be doing it based on Next to You, the Justin Bieber and Chris Brown song that you will have already watched so far in today's lesson. Over to Miss Hussein.
Okay, so based on this picture, I have come up with three ideas that I would like to explore, and I've chosen End of the World, a couple being separated due to a disaster, and Good versus Evil. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to choose my best one. I have decided to go for End of the World, but I feel like this, or Good versus Evil, is also going to link in with this. So I'm going to be merging these two ideas together. Right, so I have to start off by putting a box around three parts of the picture which I think I can get the most out of. So I'm going to start off with the smoke and the people in the background, Chris Brown and the lady in the background. What I've decided to do is Chris Brown is I've decided to make him the character of Adam, and she will be the character Eve. So I've decided to go down the religious route, so I'm going to have a lot of religious imagery in here, and one of the themes I will be exploring will be the theme of religion. So that means when I'm looking at these two characters, I need to come up with a semantic field of words that can link to the theme of religion. So I've already started off by calling Chris Brown Adam and then the lady Eve. The way I'm going to get good versus evil into this picture is by looking at the destruction that is happening here. So I have decided that these people here have been led astray, and it is caused by the smoke in the air. Right, and I want this smoke to symbolize, so it's going to symbolize destruction and evil. I'm going to have a lot of symbolism. In year 10, when you were looking at your literature text, we always told you to focus on symbolism. So this is what I want to include in my piece of writing. So I've decided that this smoke is going to symbolize destruction and evil, and these two characters, Adam and Eve, are going to symbolize hope and bringing peace. So the storyline I've decided to go for is Adam and Eve have been sent down by God to come into the present day because the destruction on earth has become too much, and it is now they are going to play the heroes that have to try and save earth and mankind. But based on this picture here, see how the woman is looking up into the sky? I've decided I want to make Eve I want Eve to be led astray as well. So here it's almost like intertextuality. I'm linking it to the story of Adam and Eve and how the snake tempted her to eat the apple. So link to Adam and Eve. Okay. Right, so now that I've got that, I think it's, I need to create a semantic field. So we'll go to the back and we'll create a semantic field of words that I'd like to use. And this will help me develop that theme of religion that I want to explore. So I've decided to go for crucifix, a semantic field of good versus evil, / religion. So crucifix, Lucifer, saviour. And so far we have Adam and Eve. So now that I have a semantic field, I can embed these words into my writing, which will help me explore the theme of religion. Okay. So if an examiner was to look at this, they'll be able to see that you know what you're looking for, and they can understand your story better.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to look at it from the Freytag pyramid point of view, which is the one that a lot of you are probably used to. So, like Miss Hussein, I came up with my 3 stories first. So I had the end of the world as well, which I think actually would be a super common story if this was the exam. I would talk about how everything was destroyed. I then potentially had the idea of heroes. Can anyone stop all of this happening if there's been some kind of massive disaster? And then my third idea I had was destruction, some kind of natural disaster. What I actually want to do to try and make my story a little bit stand out and unique, I'm going to use my idea of destruction, but I'm also going to use my idea of heroes because I quite like that. So the first thing I do to my narrative is, with the picture, I'm going to annotate it a little bit like the way Miss Hussein did, but not in as much detail. So the things I'm looking at, I've got the women. I've decided she is a scientist, and I've decided she is going to be one of the main people in my narrative. She's looking at the sky, so potentially that's something that I want to explore in the narrative. The next thing, like Miss Hussein pointed out as well, is this destruction, but I'm focusing on the fact that it's a lot of smoke, things collapsing. And then the final thing that I've noticed is the cracks in the ground, which will help me with my natural disaster. If there's cracks in the ground, it's probably some kind of earthquake. So in this type of plan, yes, I've annotated the picture, but it's 3 really small comments. The main part of my plan has to be, of course, my Freytag's pyramid. We know there are 8 parts to a Freytag's pyramid, but I'm not going to use all of them. In this case, I'm going to use my media res, exposition, the rising action, climax, the falling action, and then I'm going to use denouement at the end, because that means as a writer I don't need to worry about trying to tie everything up at the end of the narrative. I know I have to put down my 3 complex words, so I'm going to write down my 3 complex words, which are gratuitous, which for those of you who know me, that is my favourite word of all time. I'm going to use melange, partly because I like saying it, but also because I know it's complex for the exam board. And my third one is talkative, because that's what I am, and I'm going to have my characters being like that as well. The third part of my plan is the techniques, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute, and let's look at my Freytag pyramid. So I have to put detail on there so the examiner knows what I'm talking about. So my media res, jumping straight into the action, is going to be that an earthquake is happening. That means I'm jumping straight in, I'm not introducing anything, I'll be going straight into the action, a little bit like Pidgin English does. My exposition is the next thing, that is the main part of my narrative. So I'm going to have people screaming, things collapsing, and I'm going to describe the scene. Remember, this is a narrative, but I can still put some descriptions in there. For my rising action, I want to get that scientist introduced. So I'm going to have a group of scientists all huddled together. If I can think of some kind of fancy name for them, I might do. Let's think. Can we think of a fancy science name? Let's have Mrs. Biology. Yeah, so it would be sort of biology if we came together. It's very basic, but the examiners would like it. I'm not going to write down my climax or my falling action. I'm going to go straight to my denouement. My denouement is going to be the city is quiet, waiting for an aftershock. And the scientists are celebrating. Now, for an examiner, they will see that you introduced the scientists here, you had everything collapsing and people screaming here. They don't know what happens in the climax, they don't know what happens in the falling action, but what they do see is that at the end the scientists are celebrating. That will make the examiner want to read the narrative. What has happened to make them celebrate? So my final part of my plan is the techniques I'm going to use. I'm going to include a simile because I find those quite easy to use. Remember, your simile should be connected to what you're writing about, so I might have as hard as a rock, because if the buildings are collapsing, there'll be lots of rocks falling about. I'm going to use nomenclature. Remember, that's when you give characters names that suit them as people, and I've got biology. I'm going to use media res as a structural feature because it means that my narrative starts in an interesting way. So I'm jumping into the action. And I'm also going to use an epistrophe. If you can't remember what epistrophe means, it's when you end sentences or paragraphs in the same way. And I've decided that I'm going to end a couple of my paragraphs with the earth started to move. In fact, I've decided that's how I'm going to end my entire narrative, and it's probably how I'm going to end the very first paragraph from my media res. So my plan is about this much detail. It's a little bit more detailed than some of you did in your mock exams, but it means the examiner knows exactly what I'm talking about. The only part I maybe wouldn't write in my plan is this top part. That was just for me jotting down some ideas, but it is always a good idea to use them. So hopefully you've seen that it doesn't matter whether you use the box method or Freytag's pyramid. Either of those would count in the exam and they would get you those marks for planning. Good luck.